The sun had not yet risen over King's Landing, but tension already ruled the air. Smoke from last night's skirmish still drifted in the sky. Inside the Red Keep, Queen Cersei stood at the highest window, her golden hair catching the early light, her eyes sharp and cold. But something was different this time. Her enemies were no longer scattered or broken. They had come together, Jon Snow, Arya Stark, and Daenerys Targaryen, and they were coming fast. A raven had arrived at dawn, carrying a message written in neat northern script. It read, "The war ends today. You can surrender now or fall." Cersei had crushed the letter in her hand and thrown it into the fire. "Let them come," she whispered, her voice like poison. "Let them bleed for this city." Far outside the walls of King's Landing, Jon Snow stood beside Daenerys as Drogon, her last dragon, hovered behind them, wings folded but ready to strike. Arya had already slipped past the outer guards 2 nights ago. No one had seen her. No one ever did. Jon wasn't a man of many words, but today he had to be a leader. "We go at first light. No fire unless it's needed," he said, eyeing Daenerys carefully. She had changed since the north. The loss of Rhaegal and Missandei had hardened her, but something in her eyes, as she looked at Jon, told him she still listened. "I want her alive," Arya had told them both before disappearing. "Cersei dies by my hand. Promise me that." Jon had nodded. Daenerys had hesitated. "If she runs, I burn the Red Keep." "No," Jon said firmly. "No fire unless absolutely necessary. Too many innocent people." Dany had turned away, biting her lip. The queen in her wanted revenge. The woman in her still cared. Somewhere, as the sun finally rose, their army moved. The Unsullied marched in perfect silence. The Dothraki, fewer now but still deadly, rode with fire in their eyes. Northern men followed Jon, tired of war, but loyal. Tyrion walked beside Jon, quieter than usual, haunted by the cost of choosing Dany again. "She says she'll hold back, but if Cersei refuses, she won't stop." "She will," Jon said, though he wasn't sure anymore. Inside the city, the Golden Company waited near the gates, unaware of what was coming. Arya was already inside the Red Keep, disguised as a servant. She moved through the shadows, her eyes cold, her heart steady. She remembered what Cersei had done to her family, to the realm. She would not fail. By mid-morning, the gates of King's Landing shook, but instead of a full assault, Jon's army stopped. Jon rode forward alone, pulling off his helmet. He looked up at the battlements where Harry Strickland stood. "Open the gates," Jon shouted. "You're protecting a queen who will let you die for her pride. Surrender now and live." Strickland didn't answer, but the sound of wings filled the air. Drogon flew above, his shadow dark over the city. The soldiers below hesitated. Then a horn blew, not from Jon's side, but from inside the city. Arya had reached her place. She had taken out key guards near the Queen's Tower. The Red Keep was exposed. The Golden Company, sensing betrayal and chaos, began to break formation. Jon signaled. The gates opened. No full battle. No bloodbath. Just confusion, surrender, and a sudden, quiet collapse. Daenerys landed Drogon near the throne room. She dismounted, walking through the broken halls of the keep. Jon followed. The gold and red banners of House Lannister were burning. Inside the throne room, Cersei stood alone. Her guards were gone, her face pale. "So," she said, "the Dragon Queen, the bastard wolf, and the little killer, come to end me." Arya stepped from the shadows behind her. "Yes," Cersei laughed. A mad, hopeless laugh. "You think killing me will fix anything?" "No," Jon said. "But it will end the war." Arya moved forward, blade in hand. Cersei did not run. She only closed her eyes. And just like that, the lioness fell. The moment Cersei's body hit the cold stone floor, silence fell like a thick fog over the Red Keep. Arya stood over her, needles still dripping with blood. No joy, no satisfaction, only quiet finality. She looked at Jon, her eyes unreadable, then at Daenerys, who stared at the body like it wasn't real. "She's dead," Arya said, her voice flat. "It's done." Daenerys stepped closer, her boots echoing through the empty throne room. She stared at the Iron Throne behind Cersei, the seat that had caused so much death, and then looked back down at the fallen queen. "She should have burned," she whispered. Jon tensed. No more burning, no more fire. We said we'd end it differently. Arya wiped her blade clean. She didn't even fight back, just stood there. She knew. Tyrion's voice echoed behind them as he entered the room. His face looked pale, almost broken. Cersei always knew how to die with pride. She just didn't expect it to come like this. Early, quiet, and by your hand. He looked at Arya, almost with a strange kind of respect. You did what all of us wished we could. Arya didn't reply. Her eyes drifted to the throne, the symbol of everything that had gone wrong. Jon followed her gaze. And so did Daenerys. The room grew colder. Who will sit on it now? Tyrion asked, more to himself than anyone. The Mad Queen is dead. So is the Lion Queen. The stag, the wolf, all broken. What's left? Daenerys stepped forward. I came to break the wheel, she said softly. But maybe the wheel is just people like me wanting that throne. Jon looked at her carefully. Do you still want it? She turned to him. I don't know. Outside, chaos had begun to fade. The Golden Company had surrendered fully. The city gates were opened. The people of King's Landing, once terrified of dragons and foreign queens, stepped out into the streets, unsure what to expect. They expected fire, but instead they saw a flag raised with the Stark direwolf and the Targaryen dragon side by side. In the throne room, Arya moved past the throne without giving it another glance. She stood at the broken window and looked out over the city. You know, she said, this city won't forget her. They'll curse her, yes, but some will still say she kept them safe. That she ruled strong, that she never gave up. She was a monster, Dany said sharply. Arya turned, her expression calm. So was your father. So was half the men in that graveyard of a history book. And what are we? Jon asked quietly. Heroes. Tyrion chuckled bitterly. No, survivors. Just more ghosts in a city that has too many. Suddenly, there was a commotion outside. Grey Worm entered quickly, his armor stained and eyes alert. We have a problem, he said to Daenerys. The Lannister loyalists. A few of them tried to escape. They're in the dungeons, demanding to speak with the Queen. Daenerys was about to speak, but Jon raised his hand. I'll go. We don't need another bloodbath. Tyrion followed. And I'll come too. I know the faces. If anyone's playing tricks, I'll know. As they left the room, Daenerys sat on the steps of the Iron Throne, not on it, her eyes lost in thought. Arya stood behind her, watching. You're not sitting, Arya said after a long pause. I don't think I should, Dany replied. Then maybe it really is broken, Arya murmured. Below the castle, in the deep dungeons, Jon and Tyrion met a group of captured Lannister knights. One of them stepped forward, a thin, tall man with a familiar face. My name is Sir Davrick Lannister, he said. Nephew to Jaime and Cersei. You've won the war. But if you kill us all, the city will never forget. Blood breeds more blood. We're not here to kill you, Jon said. But there'll be no more Lannisters ruling. That time is over. Davrick looked past Jon. Then who rules now? Jon hesitated. He didn't have an answer. And for the first time since Cersei's fall, he realized. Ending the war had been the easy part. Now they had to survive peace. Jon walked back through the hallways of the Red Keep with the weight of 1,000 unanswered questions on his shoulders. The stone walls still smelled of smoke and death. Behind him, Tyrion kept silent, his thoughts unreadable. They had crushed the lion, but in its place stood a power vacuum big enough to swallow the realm. Back in the throne room, Daenerys had not moved. She still sat on the steps below the Iron Throne, her hands resting in her lap, her eyes distant. Arya leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching her closely. She didn't trust her, not fully, not yet. When Jon entered, Daenerys looked up. What did they say? They're not fools, Jon replied. They know it's over, but they want something, some dignity, some promise that their name won't be wiped from the history books like rot. Arya snorted. Maybe rot is what they deserve. Tyrion finally spoke. That's the danger, isn't it? We win. And suddenly we think we can erase the past. But the past never disappears. It festers, waits, and then one day it returns with a blade in its hand. Daenerys stood slowly. So what do we do now? Let them live? Let them rebuild their pride? Their legacy? Jon looked at her. You want peace or revenge? For a moment, fire flickered in her eyes, the same fire he had seen when she rode Drogon through the north, when she burned the slavers of Astapor, when she watched Missandei die. But then it faded. I want peace, she whispered, but I don't know if I can hold it. Arya stepped forward, her voice sharp. Then maybe you shouldn't rule. Daenerys turned to her slowly. Is that a threat? No, Arya said. It's a truth. Tyrion raised a hand, for it could turn worse. We need to decide something. The throne is empty. Cersei's dead. The war is over. But who rules? Jon shook his head. I never wanted it. You may not want it, Arya said, but people trust you. The North follows you. Even the South respects you. If not you, then who? I don't want to be king, Jon repeated, louder this time. I've killed, I've lost, and I've done things I'll never forgive myself for. That doesn't make me fit to rule. Arya looked at Daenerys, and the room grew colder again. Daenerys stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. I freed the slaves of Meereen. I ended the tyrants of Astapor. I stood against the Night King. I bled for this realm more than any of you. And you burned people alive, Arya said, just like your father. Tyrion watched them both, choosing his next words carefully. Maybe it doesn't have to be one of you. They all turned to him. What are you saying? Daenerys asked. Let the realm choose, Tyrion said. Not lords in fancy cloaks, not bloodlines, not names. The people, the common folk, those who bled while kings played games. Let the realm vote. Vote? Arya asked, frowning. Jon raised an eyebrow. Like the Night's Watch. Exactly, Tyrion said. The Night's Watch elected their lord commanders. Why not let the realm do the same for its king or queen? Daenerys stared at him, something unreadable in her face. And if they don't choose me, then you'll know your war wasn't for power, Tyrion said softly. It was for change. Silence stretched in the hall like a rope pulled tight. Jon looked at Arya. Sean looked at Arya. She gave the faintest nod. Daenerys took a long breath. Fine, she said. Let them choose, but I will stand for it. Then so will I, Jon said, surprising even himself. Tyrion looked relieved, but also deeply troubled. Then the realm will have its voice. That night, ravens flew from King's Landing in every direction, to the north, to Dawn, to the Reach and the Vale, to old allies and broken houses. A new system was being born, forged in the ashes of fire and blood. But not everyone welcomed it. Far from the capital, in the ruins of Harrenhal, a hooded figure watched the sky. A raven passed overhead. The figure smiled. The Dragon Queen may have won the city, he whispered, but the real game has just begun. The raven soared across a cold grey sky, its wings slicing through the wind as it carried the future of Westeros in its claws. Below, the ruins of Harrenhal loomed like a blackened corpse, twisted and half-sunken from dragonfire long past. In its shadow, the hooded man remained still, watching the bird disappear into the distance. His cloak was torn, his face half hidden, but the glint in his eyes burned with intent. He turned to the small group behind him, 5 men and a woman, each armored, each carrying a scar from past wars. The queen is weak, he said. She let the lioness live too long. She let the wolf in the north stay wild. And now she wants votes? Votes from pig farmers and cobblers? Fates spat on the cracked stone. This is not the realm Aegon conquered. One of the men stepped forward. What should we do, Lord Varys? Varys lifted his hood, revealing a face thought long dead, thin, pale, his voice ghostly. What I've always done. Protect the realm from madness or mercy. Back in King's Landing, the city was shifting beneath Jon, Arya and Daenerys like a fault line. The people had stopped hiding. They were cleaning blood off the streets, dismantling catapults, burning broken Lannister flags. But for every thankful peasant, there was one who whispered doubts about dragons, about queens, about who would sit the throne next. Inside the Red Keep, Jon stood at the high window in the War Council chamber, watching the crowd gather outside. The message had spread faster than wildfire. The rulers of Westeros would be chosen by the people. Tyrion walked in behind him, holding a goblet of wine. I've done a lot of things in this city. Burned fleets, choked kings, freed my brother. But I've never seen the people this confused. They've never had a voice before, Jon said. Tyrion sipped his wine. Yes, and now they have 1,000 of them screaming at once. Farmers want lower taxes. Smiths want free iron. Some bloke from Fleabottom thinks his dog should be king. Jon managed a half smile. Better than some of the ones we've had. Meanwhile, Arya was pacing. She didn't like it. Not the waiting, not the talking. She preferred knives to politics. She had been trained to kill, not to negotiate. She found Daenerys alone in the throne room again, standing near the melted remnants of a silver chandelier destroyed in the short fight. Dany didn't look up when Arya approached. "Still think you can win this vote?" Arya asked. Daenerys tilted her head. "Do you think I shouldn't?" Arya shrugged. "I think your dragon scares them. I think your name scares them more." Dany turned. "And what about Jon? He has no army of his own, no gold, no desire for power. Yet even now the people chant his name. Why do you think that is?" Arya didn't answer. Daenerys stepped closer. "You're loyal to him. I see that. But be honest. If the people choose me, will you still stand behind him?" Arya looked her straight in the eye. "If you win fair, I won't stop you. But if you don't," Daenerys's lips pressed into a tight line. "Then what?" "I'm not afraid of dragons," Arya said softly. "I've killed worse." And then she turned and walked away, leaving Daenerys staring at the Iron Throne in silence again. As night fell, word came of unrest in the city. Someone had set fire to a grain store near the docks. Another group had attacked an unsullied patrol, leaving one dead. Whispers spread like a plague. Daenerys is no different than Cersei. The Dragon Queen wants to rule by fear. She's just a foreign tyrant with prettier titles. Jon visited the scene of the fire himself. The people stared at him as he walked through the blackened ruins, not with fear, not with hate, but with hope. One old woman bowed before him, clutching a burned child. "You saved us," she wept. "Please don't let them burn us again." Jon didn't know what to say. He touched her shoulder gently, then turned away. Back in Harrenhal, Varys watched the fire rise in the distance from a scout's report. He smiled thinly. "The game begins now. Let the people scream. Let the queen burn. Let the wolf hesitate." He turned to his agents. "Westeros doesn't need a queen. It needs a shadow to guide it." And in the dark, his plan took root. Morning broke over King's Landing with a strange silence. No clashing swords, no dragon roars, just the nervous hum of a city holding its breath. The flames from the grain fire still smoldered near the docks, and the smell of smoke hung heavy in the air. But worse than the smoke were the whispers. They crept through every market stall, every alley, every noble house still standing. Daenerys did it herself. She's using fear again. She's the Mad King's daughter, blood doesn't lie. Jon Snow stood near the city square, watching as a crowd gathered beneath the makeshift banners announcing the first realm-wide council, a vote, the first of its kind. But as he watched, he didn't feel pride. He felt something cold twist inside him. Beside him, Arya leaned against a broken pillar, eyes sweeping the streets. "Something's wrong," she said. Jon glanced at her. "What do you mean?" "People are nervous." "Do you mean?" "People are nervous." That wasn't just a fire, Jon. That was a message. Before he could ask more, Grey Worm approached, his face tight with fury. "Another unsullied soldier was killed last night, stabbed in the neck while he slept." "By who?" Jon asked. "No one knows. No one saw. No one saw." Jormund talks. Jon's stomach sank. This isn't about revenge. This is sabotage. Grey Worm stepped closer. "The Queen wants the city locked down. No more gatherings. No more speeches. No more voting until we find who's behind it." Jon frowned. "You can't stop the vote. That'll only feed the fire." "The fire is already here," Grey Worm said, his voice low. In the Tower of the Hand, Tyrion sat surrounded by scrolls, sealed messages and torn parchments from every corner of Westeros. Lords and ladies had begun to reply to the Raven sent days ago. Some supported Daenerys, some backed Jon, but many remained silent. One letter, however, stood out. It came from the Vale, sealed with wax bearing the sigil of House Arryn. Tyrion opened it and read the word slowly, his brows furrowing. "What is it?" Sansa Stark asked as she entered the room unannounced. She had arrived in the city hours earlier under heavy guard, her face unreadable as always. Tyrion looked up at her. "Yon Royce backs, John," as do several bannermen from the Riverlands and the north. Sansa sat opposite him, and the south, still tied to Daenerys, mostly out of fear or habit. She leaned forward. "Then it's time we change the habit." Tyrion tilted his head. "You want Jon on the throne. I want someone who won't burn cities to ash over pride. Then you'll need to move quickly," he said, "because something or someone is moving against us." That night, the shadows in the Red Keep came alive. Daenerys sat in her private chamber, her hands curled into fists. Grey Worm stood guard at the door, silent as always. "They think I'm the enemy again," she said softly. "After everything I've done, I stopped the war, Jon. I spared the city. I didn't burn them, but they still fear me." Jon sat across from her, watching her carefully. Fear doesn't disappear in a day. People remember fire longer than mercy. She looked up at him, pain behind her eyes. "You trust me, don't you?" Jon hesitated. That hesitation said more than any words could. Daenerys' voice hardened. "You think I'll become my father?" "I think you're standing on a very thin line," Jon said quietly, "and people are trying to push you over it." At that moment, a knock interrupted them. Grey Worm opened the door, and a messenger rushed in. "The Raven Tower, it's gone. Burned. The ravens are dead. The letters gone." Jon stood. Who did this? The boy's face was pale. They say it was magic, or poison, or shadows. No one saw who. Daenerys turned to Jon slowly. "Someone doesn't want this vote to happen." Arya appeared behind them, quiet as death. "And I think I know who." Jon turned to her. "Who?" Arya's voice was cold. "He was supposed to be dead, but the whispers say he's moving again. Varys." Jon frowned. "Varys was executed. Burned." Arya looked at Daenerys. "You sure you killed the real one?" Dany's face paled. Outside, another fire lit the sky. This time, it was near the gates. The people weren't cheering anymore. They were screaming. The city that was supposed to find peace had just become a battlefield again. The bells of King's Landing rang again, but not for surrender, not for victory. They rang in chaos, panic, and betrayal. Jon pushed through the gates of the city square as flames climbed the walls near the Sept ruins. People scattered in every direction, some barefoot, some clutching children, all crying the same thing. "The Queen is burning us again." But it wasn't Daenerys. Not this time. A group of masked figures in black cloaks had set fire to supply carts and cut down city guards. Some wore Lannister armor stolen from the fallen. Others had daggers laced with strange green poison that ate through skin like wildfire. They weren't here to take power. They were here to destroy everything. Arya was already in the heart of it. She moved through the smoke like a shadow, blade in hand, dropping attackers silently. She noticed something strange. These men didn't fight like common thugs. They were trained, disciplined, coordinated. One of them lunged at her, sword high. She sidestepped, stabbed him through the ribs, and yanked off his mask. Her breath caught. The man had no tongue. Just like the old whispers said, Varys kept secrets, and he kept silent ones too. Inside the Red Keep, Daenerys stared out from the balcony, her face pale as the fires bloomed across the city again. The people would never believe she wasn't behind this. She had held Drogon back, kept him grounded, listened to Jon's pleas for peace, but the city still burned, and her name burned with it. Tyrion entered the chamber in a rush. In a race, they struck the grain reserves, the Raven Tower, and the western gates. "These aren't rebels, these are saboteurs, and they're smart." Dany didn't look at him. "Varys." Tyrion hesitated. "If he survived, then this is exactly how he would fight." Daenerys turned. "Then bring me proof, or bring me his head." Jon met Arya near the crumbled edge of the city wall. As screams rang behind them, she tossed the black cloak at his feet. Another one of the Silent brothers, dead by her hand. "This is bigger than whispers," Arya said. "This is planned. It's been building for weeks. They've got spies, poison, stolen armor, and they want the city to think it's Dany doing it." Jon stared at the burning rooftops. "And they'll believe it. The people remember fire more than words." Arya narrowed her eyes. "Then we need to find the man feeding the fire." Jon looked at her. "You think it's Varys?" She nodded. "Or what's left of him. Far away in the abandoned catacombs beneath the city, Varys stood before a long table lined with scrolls and ledgers. Around him, the last of his hidden network former maesters, forgotten nobles, bastard-born assassins. He spoke softly, with no warmth. "The realm is a body," he said, "and when a limb rots it must be cut off. Daenerys is not fire and blood. She is rot. So is Jon Snow." A woman in dark robes approached. "The people will fear us before they ever follow us." Varys smiled faintly. "Fear is a seed. In time it grows into control." He turned to a small locked chest and opened it. Inside, 3 glass vials glowed faint green wildfire. By nightfall, the city was on the brink. Jon returned to the Red Keep, soot on his face, fury in his blood. He found Daenerys in the war room, staring at a map that now looked like a grave. "You think this is me," she said coldly. "I didn't say that, but you wonder, don't you?" she asked, stepping closer. "If I lost control, if I did what they say." Jon's voice was low. "I don't wonder. I know this wasn't you. But the people don't matter," she snapped. "Not if they choose fear over truth." He stepped toward her. "Don't become what they say you are." Her voice dropped. "And what should I become, Jon? A ruler without fire? A queen without a throne?" He looked her dead in the eyes. "A leader." For a second, her eyes softened. Then Grey Worm burst in. "We found something." They followed him down into the dungeons beneath the keep, where a prisoner waited behind thick bars. He was old, beaten, and half-starved, but his eyes burned with stubborn fire. "Qyburn," Jon whispered in disbelief. The former hand of Cersei gave a crooked smile. "You think she died alone?" "She had plans, and Varys was always good at keeping pieces moving." Jon leaned forward. "Where is he?" Qyburn chuckled. "You'll find him when the sky turns green again." Arya's voice echoed behind them. "Wildfire." Jon turned to her. She looked shaken. "He's going to burn the city," she said. "All of it." Jon's voice was quiet but filled with dread. "He's not trying to take the throne. He's not trying to take the throne. He's trying to destroy it forever." The bells of King's Landing had stopped ringing, but the threat hanging over the city was louder than any sound. In the heart of the Red Keep, the truth settled like lead in Jon's chest. Varys was alive, and worse, he was planning to reduce the entire city to ash, not with dragons, but with wildfire, the Mad King's favorite weapon, hidden beneath the streets long ago. Jon paced in the war room, eyes burning with frustration. Arya stood near the door, arms crossed, a map of the city open on the table between them. Daenerys leaned over it, her fingers tracing the known wildfire storage points, several beneath marketplaces, 2 under old sept ruins, 1 horrifyingly close to the orphanage district. "We need to evacuate the lower city," Jon said. "Now." Tyrion entered then, grim as death. "Too late. People are already panicking. Half the city believes Daenerys is going to finish what she started last time. They're running in every direction. That's exactly what Varys wants." Arya spoke next, eyes sharp. "If they move to the wrong place, they'll run into the fire." Daenerys slammed her fist on the table. "We stop this now. Tell Grey Worm to seal the gates. No one in, no one out, until we find every single wildfire cache and destroy it." Jon looked at her sharply. "Seal the gates. Dany, they'll panic even more." "They already are," she said. "If we let them scatter, we lose any chance of saving them. We contain it, then we cut out the infection." Arya stepped forward. "There's another way." Everyone looked at her. "I know where Varys is." The tunnels beneath King's Landing were a maze of stone and rot, half forgotten by time. Arya had memorized them during her time training with the Faceless Men. Now, every shadow felt familiar. She moved silently, Jon close behind, cloaked in black. "He's deep," Arya whispered. "Too deep for any light. That's why he chose these tunnels." As they crept through, the scent of smoke grew thicker. And then in the distance, voices. Arya raised her hand, and they pressed themselves against the wall. "Tonight," someone was saying, "once the bell tower strikes twice, we light the main charge. The sept ruins first. That'll start the collapse." "And the queen?" another voice asked. "She'll burn with the rest," came the cold reply. "And Snow, too. The wheel will break under fire." Arya moved fast, a blur in the dark. 3 silent steps and one of the saboteurs was dead. throat slit. Jon lunged at the second, knocking him out cold, but the third ran. They chased him through the tunnels. The man burst out near the remains of the great sept, sprinting across the rubble. Arya flung a knife, it caught him in the calf, and he fell screaming. Jon caught up first, pinning the man down. "Where is Varys?" The man spat blood. "He's everywhere. You kill one whisper, 10 more rise." Arya stepped forward, grabbed his collar, and whispered, "Then we'll kill 10. Back at the keep, Daenerys received the report and didn't hesitate. "Send Drogon. Not to burn, to fly. Let the people see him. Let them remember he's watching." Tyrion raised a brow. "A silent threat." "No," she said. "A no," she said. "A reminder." Grey Worm nodded and left to command the troops. The Queen walked to the balcony and whispered, "Please, let it be enough." In the city below, panic turned to dread. The sight of Drogon circling above like a black shadow in the twilight sky did little to calm anyone, but it slowed the riots. For now, Jon and Arya returned to the keep with the captured saboteur in chains. He had confessed to everything. Varys had been gathering former loyalists for months, hiding them in cellars and crypts, promising them a new Westeros without kings, queens, or dragons. "He believes the realm should rise without fire or blood," the prisoner muttered. "But if it must rise from ashes, so be it." Jon looked at Daenerys. "We need to stop him tonight." Arya pulled something from her belt, a map, stained and torn. "He's hiding beneath the dragon pit. The main cache is there. If he sets it off, it'll take half the city." Daenerys' voice was steel. "Then I'll go myself." Jon stepped forward. "No, you can't. If the people see you near the fire again, even before it's lit, they'll never believe it wasn't you." "I don't care what they believe it," she snapped. "You should," Jon said firmly. "Because if they turn on you, there won't be a realm left to rule." A long silence. Then Arya nodded once. "I'll go. I'll end it." Daenerys looked at her. "And if he escapes again?" Arya's eyes were ice. "He won't." As Arya vanished into the night once more, Tyrion turned to Jon. "If she fails, she won't," Jon said. But in his heart a quiet voice whispered, "And if she does, will there be anything left to save?" The night was thick with smoke and dread. Arya moved like a shadow through the crumbled stone of the dragon pit, the hollow ruins echoing with memories of once great beasts, now long dead. Beneath her feet, the ground vibrated faintly beneath the dragon pit. Varys' plan waited in silence, barrels of wildfire buried deep, ready to devour half the city if lit. She crouched behind a broken pillar, watching. There he was, Varys, alive, pale, eyes sunken from hiding but alive. He stood beside a makeshift altar of stone, surrounded by glass vials, parchment, and 2 mute guards. At his feet, a torch, unlit but ready, lying beside a fuse already buried into the rubble. A single spark and King's Landing would be reduced to ruin. Arya stepped forward, dagger glinting. "Didn't burn hot enough last time?" Varys turned slowly. He didn't flinch. He didn't run. He simply looked tired. "I always hoped it would be you," he said. "The girl who became death. You understand what must be done." Arya raised her blade. "You're going to burn thousands of people." "They're already burning," Varys replied calmly. "Every day under another throne. First Aerys, then Robert, then Cersei, now Daenerys. Jon will follow the same path. It always ends in fire. I only want to stop the cycle." "By becoming the monster yourself?" Arya asked. He shook his head slowly. "There are no monsters, only decisions no one else will make." "You're wrong." "I don't need you to agree," he said, stepping back. "Only to fail to stop me." He whistled once sharp and fast. From the shadows 4 more assassins appeared, armed and silent, blades already drawn. Arya didn't hesitate. She moved with speed, steel flashing under the moonlight. The first attacker lunged, but Arya ducked low, sliced his leg, and buried her dagger into his gut. The second grabbed her from behind. She flipped him over her shoulder, stabbed once, twice, until he dropped. 2 more came. She darted behind a pillar, breathing hard, using the ruins to her advantage. One slipped in blood, and Arya finished him quickly. But the last managed to cut her arm, sharp pain, warm blood. She gritted her teeth, finished him too. Now only Varys remained. He had picked up the torch. Don't, Arya warned. He looked at her, regret in his eyes. I wanted peace. She threw the dagger straight into his heart. He fell with a gasp, torch clattering beside him. Arya approached slowly, breath ragged, blood dripping from her sleeve. Varys coughed, one last whisper escaping his lips. It was never about me. The next one will light it. His eyes went still. Arya looked down at the torch, then at the barrels of wildfire hidden just beneath the stone cracks. She exhaled. Not today. The next morning, King's Landing woke to news that spread faster than fire. The saboteurs were dead. The wildfire plot was stopped. Varys was no more. In the Red Keep, Daenerys stood before a crowd gathered in the courtyard, lords, soldiers, common folk alike. Beside her stood Jon Snow and Tyrion. Arya remained out of sight, high above on a balcony, bandaged and silent, watching. Dany's voice rang clear. There are those who still want this city to burn, who fear change so much they would rather watch it die than see it rise. But we stopped them. You stopped them, not through fire, not through fear, but through unity. The crowd listened, quiet but attentive. Tyrion stepped forward. The vote will proceed. The realm will choose its leader, not by fire nor name, but by will. Murmurs passed through the crowd. Jon didn't speak. He looked at the people, so many bruised, broken, tired. He looked at Daenerys, then at Arya above, whose eyes met his for just a second. Later that day, the first vote in Westeros' history was cast. The small council, made up of northern, southern, and free city representatives, stood together. It was tense, divided, but not afraid. When the final vote was read aloud in the hall, a hush fell. By majority, Tyrion said, the realm has chosen. He paused. Jon Snow. Gasp. Jon Snow. Gasp. Silence. Then applause. Slow at first, then stronger. But Jon didn't smile. He stepped forward, voice calm. I never asked for this. I never wanted it. But I'll serve. Not for power, not for crowns, but because this realm deserves peace. Daenerys stood still. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she stepped forward. I came to break the wheel, she said softly. And maybe giving it away is how we do that. She handed him the Targaryen sigil she had worn on her chest. Jon took it with solemn eyes. In the quiet that followed, Arya packed her things. She'd saved a city, but she didn't belong in it. I'm going west, she told Jon as they stood near the docks. West of Westeros, he asked. There's more than thrones and fire out there. He nodded. Be careful. She smirked. I'm always careful. She murked. I'm always careful. She boarded her ship, wind at her back. Elsewhere, Dany flew one final time with Drogon north, far north, seeking a place where no one knew her name. Jon ruled not as a king, but as a guardian of peace. No throne of swords, no crown of gold. Just a man trying to rebuild what fire had almost destroyed. And in the ashes of war, the realm finally began to heal.